In a world where fans have grown tired of the same old cookie-cutter Comic-Con formats, only one con defies the odds. Only one Comic-Con stands what fans really want. Only one Comic-Con dares calls itself terrific. That's right, this August 17th through the 19th at the all-new giant-size Mohegan Sun Expo Center in Uncasville, Connecticut comes Terrific-Con. Connecticut's Terrific Comic-Con is back with New England's largest gathering of comic book artists and writers. Plus, Terrific-Con delivers actors from your favorite TV shows and movies. And there's an all-new expanded gaming section as we give you tabletop gaming, video games, and so much more. Plus, don't forget, all kids 10 and under get in free at Terrific-Con and can be part of the all-new All Yeah Kids Comic-Con. Join us for 3 full days of Comic-Con action only in Connecticut at Terrific-Con. For more information, go to our website, www.terrificcon.com.
Hey everybody, happy 4th of July. Welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. A great way to celebrate the 4th, a conversation with Mark Waid. One of my favorites, both personally and professionally. I've known Mark now for about 12 years, and he never disappoints, both personally and professionally. Always great stories, both fictionally and anecdotally. And it's great to share this conversation with you. We go overtime. I love Mark, but I always love the fact that usually he wants to keep things under an hour, and let's keep it short, okay? And we'll come back, we'll do more, which he does. He always comes back. We talk about Doctor Strange. He just started his new run, and we also talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp, another new run that he started. He just wrapped up, or is wrapping up, I should say, his Captain America run, which has just been outstanding. We talk about all those things. We also talk a little bit about current culture war controversies that Mark has found himself in the middle of. Dangling participle there. But, I'm always interested in Mark's opinions, and I think he is a strong advocate for those who recently, let's be honest, have been bullied by the alt-right. It's one thing to disagree and not like a product that's coming out. It's another thing to personally attack people at some of these comic book companies. And there has been evidence of some of these people on the alt-right of doing that. There was a big controversy. I guess one of the alt-right guys ran a Indiegogo fund to make a new graphic novel. And it's called Jawbreakers, I believe. And Antarctic Press was going to publish it. And all of a sudden, then Antarctic Press heard about, some of the treatment of maybe, people that disagreed with the alt-right and how they personally went out to attack, again, people in the comic book industry and even lousier people in the comic book retailing industry. And it just got really, really ugly. And Mark, found himself part of that debate. And I just wanted him to kind of clarify where he came from, why he did what he did, and understand the controversy a little bit clearer from one of its participants. So it's great to talk to Mark. I think it's a good discussion about what's happening today, both in the comic book world and in our regular world as well. As I say, the culture wars at a high fever pitch. We're all aware of it. We're all living it right now. So I wanted to hear Mark's point of view, and he was very candid about his feelings. So, in fact, it's a little word sensitive. If you've got children listening to the show, I might suggest as we get into that conversation, you may want to switch off and wait and listen to this with a more adult audience, because it gets a little raw, but I think it needs to understand the level of rudeness that has been going on. So, also, I should say, shame on me, we also talk about Archie 1941, which I am really excited about. 1941 was the debut of Archie, and much like the recent really good Archie stories, that I love the classic Archie, format. I grew up on it. I still love it. I think it's really fun. But I also appreciate the things that Veronica Fish, one of Mark's collaborators, and Chip Zdarsky, Mark himself, have contributed to Archie and trying to make it a little more real world. And Archie 1941 is going to be 1941 real world. And we're going to get a feeling of World War II's home front from a Riverdale perspective. I'm really excited about that. That's going to start in the fall, and Mark gives us a preview of that. So lots of great conversation with Mark Waid, and I think fitting for the 4th of July weekend on today's Word Balloon. It's all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners, my own superhero league that helps support me via Patreon and what I'm trying to do here at Word Balloon. Thank you very much, League. More new subscribers have jumped on in the last couple days, and I thank you very much for your support. It makes it easier to make this show and continue to go to conventions and make the new connections that provide us with great conversation. And I try each week to give you as many word balloons as I can, sometimes more than one a week. Word Balloon is free. It'll always be free. But if you want to help the cause, you can go to patreon.com/wordballoon or the front page of wordballoon.com and click on the Patreon ad. But thank you very much for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by InStock Trades at instocktrades.com. Let's look at some great Mark Waid product waiting for you at great prices at instocktrades.com. The classic Superman Birthright, Mark Waid, Lanil Yu, 12-issue miniseries that was a great retelling of Superman's origin. Lots of this was used in Smallville and other elements of Superman TV and film. 42% off, $11.59. You can also get Hunter Killer Volume 1. This was a great thing that he did for Top Cow. Mark Waid, Mark Silvestri, 42% off, $11.49. There's also Captain America, Red Glare, the premiere hardcover. Mark doing the writing, Andy Kubert and Lee Weeks doing the art. This is 42% off. And this is when Captain America had no powers, and he had the armor that tried to still fight the good fight when he was still skin and bone Steve Rogers. When they wore off the super soldier formula. This is 42% off, $17.39. There's also Captain America, American Nightmare, which also features the writing of Kurt Busiek and Roger Stern, along with Mark Waid. Andy Kubert and Patrick Zurcher among the artists, 42% off. It's $14.49. There's also Mark's great run on Brave and Bold. Mark doing the writing, Collins doing the art. And this is Brave and Bold, Demons and Dragons, 42% off, $10.43. And then there's Amazing Spider-Man Family Business, the original graphic novel that was co-written with Mark and James Robinson, 42% off, $14.49. Some of the great Mark Waid product you will find at great prices at instocktrades.com. Don't take my word for it. You'll find it at the website. And don't forget, if your orders are $50 or more, you'll receive free shipping. One of my favorites. It's a great online bookstore, and they're great people, and they treat you right. InStockTrades.com. All right, without further ado, let's get into our very interesting conversation with Mark Waid on today's Word Balloon. Oh, I'm always happy to welcome Mark Waid back to Word Balloon. Dude, I could talk to you every week. You know that.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Yeah, I think by this point, it's first of all, we have these mutual loves of things beyond comics. We're of that same era and everything, and also, yeah, man, you continue to crank out great stories. I am thrilled with your current Marvel work, and certainly, absolutely, and certainly loved. I know you wrap things up with your run of Champions, and you're winding down on Captain America. Any thoughts on those before we get to the new stuff?
I don't think so. I mean, it was it was a kick to obviously it was a real kick to do Captain America again, but only with Somni. I said I would only do it with Somni because that's like my fourth bite of that apple.
Yes.
And if I've learned anything in comics, never go back to what you did before, because people will judge you against how good they remember it being versus how good it actually may have been. So, yeah.
Yeah, but also, now that's funny. You were saying that in terms of Cap, but I've loved everything you've done with Chris. And you guys are such a great team. It really is this beautiful matchup. And I mean,
thank you.
Yeah, and I truly respected both of you for years prior to you getting together. And every run has just been exceptional, whether it's been Daredevil or Black Widow or obviously this run wrapping up on Cap. And even I really enjoy. I'm also enjoying these other artists that you've got as you wind down. I know Chris has since left the book. But I like these like little one shots that you've been doing since 700.
Those have been a lot of fun. I mean, it's basically we needed 4 months to vamp. When I came on the book, I remember I sat down with Ta-Nehisi and I said to him, "Look, I you should be writing this book, not me. Like, I enjoy writing this book, but you should be writing this book because that's an important moment. And I wouldn't have given it up for anybody but Ta-Nehisi. So it was a good experience, but he needed a few extra months to ramp up. So
Sure.
Tom Brevoort called, hey, we need a couple of extra months worth of books. Can we do 4 issues and do something special? And that gave me a chance to, do a story. As you know, for those who haven't picked it up, it's a story of Cap's distant descendant in the 23rd, 24th century. And the trials and tribulations he's going through at the same time. Every time he's a historian, so he's constantly looking back on what would Cap have done, what would Cap do, and so that gave us a chance to do a bunch of vignettes that tie into the main story. And every time you see him with a different artist, whether it's Alan Davis or Howard Chaykin or whoever, doing like a 3 or 4 page segment that is a direct reflection on what's happening in the present day continuity of the book. And it's been fun to bounce back and forth like that, or to write for, like, again, my wish list of really great guys to do Cap with.
Now, I know you're going to remember this old Batman story that I'm sure I read in an original 100-page spectacular. But those Batman from the Future stories, was that guy Brain? Didn't he become?
Brain Taylor. Yep, the Batman of the far future. Yes. Some of that was on my mind. I'll tell you the truth. Some of that was on my mind. The Superman of 2966. Some of that was on my mind. You know, Brevoort and I talk the same language, so that was kind of in both our heads as we were going.
That's great, man. Fantastic. No, that's great, and it is truly. It's a great way to close out your run and do these fun stories and stuff. And good palate cleanser for Ta-Nehisi when he takes over. So I'm really tell me what you can about the writers' room now in the Marvel retreats, because it has changed. You know, a lot of new faces now at the table, it seems.
A lot of new faces, yeah. But I got to tell you, it's still the same spirit, which I love. Like, there's no contentiousness, there's no bitterness, you get a bunch of people in that room talking about what they want to be doing and their books and how they want to approach these characters. And then we just throw ideas back and forth. There's a lot of back and forth in that room, and there's, nobody ever flips over the table and storms out.
Good.
Not anymore, anyway. So, we kind of weeded those guys out. But no, it's, sometimes it gets a little, on rare occasions, sometimes it gets a little sort of professionally contentious, because, people they love these characters. All of us love those characters. We're all in the room. So, there's times when it become a quick argument about whether or not this character would do that or how that character would react. But it's then we all got to have beers afterwards. It's great.
Sure. Well, it sounds like, kind of a sports bar sort of atmosphere. And if anything, because I remember those from previous Marvel retreats where, Doctor Strange would never do that. Or
Right.
I loved the whole when Doctor Strange's hands were crushed by the Hulk, who would be the next Sorcerer Supreme, and it ultimately becoming Dr. Voodoo, the former Brother Voodoo, of course.
Right, former Brother Voodoo, exactly.
And it's like really, it's funny hearing, these things of, the different voices. Well, he'd never do that. What are you talking about? Of course he'd do that. And that's great, man. That's beautiful. That's comics. That's your conversation in the comic store.
I got to tell you, some of the best ideas for somebody else's book come out of that room. A lot of times it's, if you see something you love in a Marvel comic, there's a non-zero chance that came from some other writer in that room. And we were all just having a great time swapping ideas back and forth with no ego.
That's excellent, man. Well, there's a lot of guys now like Donny Cates and Matt Rosenberg. Matthew Rosenberg, right? Yeah, okay. I was going to say that I've met briefly at cons, and I'm like, God, I got to get you guys on Word Balloon. Forgive the ego. But it's like, I love what these guys are doing, and I think there is a new, zest of creativity going on with these new voices. Tell me about CB being EIC. How's that going?
Well, it's going great. I mean, he knows the characters. He loves these characters. He loves this world. He's got an amazing eye for artists, which is
true,
enormously helpful because it's a room full of writers. So he thinks in visual terms, thinks about what the look of the book is going to be like. He's got a real. I think he's still really sort of gelling what his concrete vision of the Marvel universe is, but I could be wrong. I mean, I could be 2 or 3 months behind on that.
Okay.
But that is in no way to say that he doesn't have a strong direction, a strong hand. But he's good on story too, man. I mean, we sat down and we did another smaller conference that I can't really talk about right now, but we'll be talking about that in a couple of months for another upcoming project with a smaller group of writers. And he showed up for the whole day. And it was me and Brevoort and him and a few other writers. And man, he was on fire. He was just right there. And he didn't say a whole lot, but when he did speak, it was like, that's a really good idea. Excellent. Or that's a very good point. So it's, it's good to have somebody in there who, and there's some humility to it. Like I don't do well with, as you know, don't do well with executive editors with a giant chip on their shoulder or something to prove. I like guys who have a little bit of humility to them, and that's, CB in spades.
That's awesome, man. No, and he's always struck me as that kind of guy in our conversations as well. So, no, I'm really happy for him having the job. And again, I think there's a really good sense of new voices and interesting ideas. Well, based on what you just said about a potential or a project that is coming up in a couple months, we've been hearing teasings of summer, some big summer announcements that are coming. I'm assuming that might be one of these announcements.
I'm thinking San Diego is probably where they're going to make the play on this one. Yeah.
Makes sense. Well, I'm glad we're talking before San Diego. Hey, I'm not going to be there, and you just told me off the air you're not going to be there either. And yeah, I wanted to get a bunch of creators such as yourself before everybody does get busy with the rush of San Diego and everything. So I'm glad we're talking. Well, on to the current projects. So you got Doctor Strange and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Is there anything else current that I'm missing?
There is. Let me try to do the math on this.
Oh, and I do know another non-Marvel thing that I did want to briefly talk about as well. Archie 1941.
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah, those are the three right now.
Okay.
Archie from 1941, Doctor Strange, and Ant-Man. And it's normally I have two or three more additional projects on top of this, but man, I just got to a point. There's two things going on. One is I just kind of got to a point in the spring where I just felt like I haven't had a vacation in a long, long time, and I've earned it. And I'm also doing a lot more outside gaming work these days.
Interesting.
Blizzard and Activision and outfits like that. Consulting work, some writing work. A few of us at Marvel Comics get a chance to dabble in that pool, having nothing to do with Marvel Comics. It's just we've known each other because we're fellow Marvelites or whatever. And that scratches a really interesting itch. And certainly, makes up for the, whatever I'm turning down in terms of scripting. So I don't have to worry about, banging a tin cup, shaking a tin cup in your face and saying, I created Impulse. Give me $1.
You're not there
but
yet.
The gaming work, I mean, it's really comics writer guys are really good at video game stuff because it's about economy of storytelling, same as it is with comics. What can you do to get the most amount of information across in the least amount of time and the most valuable, use those minutes valuably, use those minutes preciously. So that's something we're good at. We're not, we're good at the terseness of it.
That's excellent. Are you able to talk about what IPs you're working on or no?
No, I can't really. I don't think I can right now. There's stuff that's already come out.
What's come out?
Can I talk about it? I don't know that I can talk. I don't know that I can talk about it. I can say that it was
good.
I can say that it was a big one, and what was cool about it was every once in a while for the 2 weeks or so before leading up to it and as it was coming out, I could walk by my television and I would hear the commercial and I would hear, oh, I wrote that line of dialogue, or oh, hey, that's me.
Outstanding.
That was kind of fun.
That's great. Good Lord, I can only imagine what that feels like. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Beautiful, man. Very, very cool. Well, let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about Archie 1941 because that's not out yet and you can kind of tell us, I'm assuming, now I know the year is obviously the year that Archie debuted in PEP, is that right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I would guess, given 1941, are we going to get kind of a Riverdale home front during the war year kind of feel to the story?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's they came to me about this about a year and a half ago. Mike Pellerito and the guys at Archie came to me and said, well, we want to see about doing this as a 5-issue miniseries. We think this could be a really cool idea. And I thought about it. I don't normally write historical fiction, but that was an interesting take, is what can you do with these characters and make it a little, not more serious, but a little less goofy, if you will, because of the time. What can you do? And so I came up with a long outline that we liked a lot, and then it just sat there for like a year. For whatever reason, it just kind of sat around for a year, and then they called me back a few months ago and said, well, we'd like to get this back on the schedule. I said, this is great, but I'm I'm really wrapped up with stuff right now. Can I bring in, a heavy hitter? Can I bring in Brian Augustyn, who I've been working with forever?
Yes.
Brian and I had buddies at DC Comics 30 years ago.
Gotham by Gaslight among the projects.
Yep, Gotham by Gaslight, Brian Augustyn, yeah. And, we worked together on Flash for all those years and stuff. We've done projects over and on. We haven't worked together for a while, but this seemed like a perfect fit because Brian's smart about that stuff. Brian's hipper into the historical angle that I am. And so it just became, let's take the outline, let's knock it around, let's see what we can do with it, and give it an atmosphere and a feel to it. Brian's really carrying the torch on terms of the feel and the atmosphere of it. He was talking about, I'm doing the research, and we didn't get into the war obviously until early December 1941. So, but you don't want to do a whole lot of stuff before that because that's the most interesting thing that happened in 1941.
Agreed.
So you lead up to it. So the first issue is basically pre-Pearl Harbor, setting the stage, and the idea that the Archie kids, some of them are going off to college, some of them are going away to school, some of them have graduated. They don't know what they're going to do, but they've all graduated in summer of 1941.
Oh, interesting.
Where do you go from there?
Yeah.
And so, this is a time when there really wasn't even such a thing as a teenager yet, as we know them today. That was a post-war invention. Teenagers, yes, they were kids in their teenage years, but they didn't just hang out and goof around and do stuff all the time. They were expected to carry their weight.
Either go to school or get to work. And man, my dad was a 14-year-old that quit high school and went to work at 14.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So it's a little less carefree in that time, and a lot more expected of these kids from the adults in their life. So we're playing into that, leaning into that. And then you get a chance to really get a sense once Pearl Harbor hits how the town reacts. It's not 100%. And you think back to those times, even going into the war, even in October, November, leading up to where we're going into the war. And we're obviously, as Americans, we're aware of what's going on overseas.
Yes.
But the idea of intervention is not universally embraced over here. The idea, yes, and there are going to be certain people in Riverdale. There's going to be certain adults in Riverdale who, once war is declared, are like, "Not my boy," not my son.
Sure,
yeah,
absolutely, man.
And making a good case for it. On the other hand, you got somebody like Veronica's dad, who is doing some really, making a real killing in munitions. Not just for the Americans, but remember, a lot of these guys, the Rockefellers, the
Bushes,
exactly.
The Prescott Bushes, the 41's father or grandfather, I forget which.
Yeah,
timeline. It would probably be the father. Go on,
making some good bank. Overseas, dealing with powers that aren't Axis powers yet, but some of the what we forget, things that Brian pointed this out. It wasn't illegal to do business with Germany,
right, until
World War II, until we entered the war. It was, you could do that kind of stuff, and a lot of people wouldn't give it a second thought.
Agreed. So, even Hollywood was cranking out movies, and obviously the international market was important to them, and would have to be careful with story subjects because you're right, in those pre-America entering the war years, we don't want to offend the Germans. And really, we don't want to offend the Germans, and it's like, again, and it's so easy, Mark, and you know it too, to look back and have a much more evolved view of that time, and it's like, well, that's not fair. And again, I'm not making any excuses for this behavior, but it was a legitimate debate of, well, it's not our war. Why should we get involved? That's epping there. There's a whole ocean in between us and everything.
Also, it wasn't on everyone's mind 24/7 because there was no 24/7 news, for God's sake.
That's right.
Dad got the newspaper after work, and that was your source of news. And, radio would kick in and maybe something would happen there and you'd hear something. But by and large, we're not in that 24/7 news cycle back then. And it's easy to, it's hard to remember a time when we weren't perpetually in a state of outrage
and information
24/7.
Yes,
and information, glutted with information at any given time.
You're right, and even from a radio standpoint, I'm a huge, as being a broadcaster myself, his broadcast history nerd, and Edward R. Murrow in the 30s is in London and going, hey, shit's going down, New York, CBS. We got to cover this. And they're like, oh, no. Stick to covering the opera. Stick to covering all the cultural stuff. Let's not get into the politics. We shouldn't really be involved. And it literally wasn't until World War II that suddenly CBS broadcasting and radio broadcasting became and NBC as well, became very important to the daily news cycle, and radio was a huge part of it. But it wasn't until, like you said, after the war.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun writing this stuff. I mean, Peter Krause doing the art.
Excellent. Your old pal, absolutely.
My old pal on Irredeemable. And he's tailor-made for this thing. He's just tailor-made for this thing. It's less slapstick comedy, less comedy in general. I would say I want to say there's still some funny in every issue because it's still an Archie comic, but there are grimmer times. And the only swerve I had to make, and this came late in the game. This is one of those rare times when I had a project ready to go, and then I found out something that screwed everything too late. And that was that I was building the whole thing around, what are our boys going to do when the war hits? What if the draft starts?
Well,
what happens then with our boys? But John, here's a fun fact. What was the age of draft in 1941?
It wasn't 18?
It was 21.
Wow.
So I wrote, I did this whole week spent doing this 5-issue outline, building the whole thing around, will our boys be drafted? Will our boys be drafted? The entire motor of the story was that. And then I steered into that wall at the last possible second. Awesome. Thank God I found that out. But, that was fun. So I've had a lot of kids lied about their age and joined.
Yeah,
a lot of kids, and signed, or they had their parents sign and stuff. So I can still have kids, going overseas, and some of our stuff will be happening either stateside or overseas after Pearl Harbor. So, but just hey kids, do all your fact checking before you actually write anything.
History is important to get it right.
History turns out is important. Yeah.
No, I get it. And honestly, again, baseball and Hollywood, it was so interesting when the war hit. And of course, in the case of Hollywood, they were older actors and stuff, and they stepped up and would volunteer. The whole controversy of John Wayne's not serving is an interesting thing to kind of delve into.
Whereas conversely, if you remember Alex Raymond, the artist.
I didn't remember. Tell me.
Alex Raymond, he'd already been mustered out. He was a family man at that point, an older man. And he decided, I can't let this stand. He goes back in the service for a couple of years.
I didn't know that. Eisner, of course, goes off to war. Kirby goes off to war. Yeah, we should keep it in the comic world. Yeah, I'm trying to think of who are the other. You're the historian. You know better than me.
They got a ton of them. I mean, there was Siegel, obviously. I mean,
that's right.
A ton of them going overseas. Stan,
Siegel going over. That's kind of when they kind of lost control of the Superman stuff, right? And National kind of took over.
That's about the time when DC was able to firm up their hold on it, and because Siegel didn't have as much time to argue every day.
Sure. Interesting stuff, man. No, I love that period. I from an observational standpoint and everything. It's really, really interesting. All the various ways that it impacted the culture, both because of the moral imperative of joining the righteous cause, but also, just the individual stories. And obviously Kirby, God, I loved when they reprinted The Losers. And that stuff that he did. His 70s war stuff never really gets its due, I think. And those are such interesting stories. And that whole him and Kanigher and Kubert and Russ Heath, and I know obviously you know all this stuff really well as well. Oh, I love that stuff. And it just the way that they interpreted the war is just amazing. Yeah, that's all.
And scene. That's right. Yeah, but you're right. Yes.
Well, anyway, let's move on to some of the other things you're doing now. Sure. Doctor Strange, I'm so glad you got back to it, man. I loved that miniseries that you did. And,
thank you.
And I know that you even said as it wrapped up that eventually you'd get back to Doctor Strange, and here you are.
It's funny. We're at the point now. Tom Brevoort and I sit and talk about this every couple of years, where we look at, okay, when I'm cycling out of one project and we're moving on to something else, where do I go now? I mean, I've hit everything at some point or another. It's harder and harder to find the characters that I haven't had some sort of a run on, or even a substantial run, even an insubstantial run. Doctor Strange was a rare case of, yes, I'd done a miniseries with a character before, but it was during a period where he didn't have his powers, and he was teaching somebody else.
Yeah.
And so, it wasn't quite the same as I would take, if I were approaching it today. And so I was able to get a different handle on it, get a different feel for it. And it took me, again, I freely admit it took me too long to figure out what this character was about to me before I started. It took me way too long. But once I nailed it, I kept reminding myself, he's Doctor Strange. He's Doctor Strange. He thinks like a surgeon. He thinks like a doctor. And in a magical world, he obeys to some degree the Hippocratic Oath of not necessarily doing no harm, but the part about, I will not act out of anger. I will not act out of vengeance. I will not act out of violence when I can. And I will heal. And so that makes a lot more sense to me for Doctor Strange.
Excellent. He's got a new cosmic sidekick. Well, and even he says, does he say it or does she say it, that I've been treating you like a sidekick? Kana? Is her name?
Yeah,
Kana?
she says, Kana says, yeah, I've been treating you like a sidekick, and you know what? And then he, blows the doors off the joint in the end issue 2, and so, shows what he can do. And she's like, well, perhaps I underestimated you. Yes. I did want to have somebody to talk to in space. I did want to play around with somebody who was a potential love interest, but not necessarily a love interest. I really like writing the will they, won't they angle in characters. And I like the idea that she's a technomancer. She's arcanologist. She is a woman who would rather deal in, what is the modern day chemical equivalent of Eye of Newt and Toad of Frog,
I'm reaching for the second issue because you got the teaser. And, it obviously looks like Stephen at the end of the issue is back on Earth. And we've got the teaser for issue 3, which, I see that it is. It's coming out on the 4th. So this episode sadly won't come out until after the 4th. So I don't know what you want to talk about in terms of Stephen versus the Super Skrull.
Right. Actually, he's not back on Earth yet. He's still in space for a while. There's a teaser at the end that deals with a guy who at first looks like he's some sort of a bookkeeper or accountant or something. He's looking at Stephen's accounts and disappointed that there's in such disarray. And then you pull back and you realize, no, he's like some sort of magical assessor, some sort of magical accountant, some guy keeping, we always say magic has a price. Well, here's the guy who keeps track.
Interesting. Okay. Excellent.
And we'll be dealing with him once we're back from space.
Okay. And so Kana and he obviously are going to face the Super Skrull together.
Yes.
Excellent.
I not willfully. I mean, Strange takes one look at Super Skrull and it's like, I'm out of here. This is not my jam, and I'm not really that powerful. But then he sees he's got a time stone. You're like, well, damn it, can't let the Super Skrull have this thing. What do we do? So it's not an easy choice to make, but it gives us a chance. I don't want to get into it with that too much, but it really gave us a chance to sort of explore what the time stone can do these days. They've sort of Marvel sat down with the writers and figured out what are the limitations of the Infinity Stones, what are the powers of them, they're Infinity Stones. You really don't want to have them terribly limited.
Right.
But with the time stone, you can jump back or forth in time about 30 seconds to a minute. That's about as far as you can go, but that's pretty far if you're trying to wage war, if you're trying to create an army. You can do it with one person if you can keep cycling back every 30 seconds.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm also looking at your forward that's on the front page and everything. And maybe this has always been Doctor Strange's ethos, but I don't remember it ever being really laid out like this. He's the Sorcerer Supreme, Earth's first defense against all manner of magical threats. And I guess that's the case, but I don't know. Has that always been the case, or is that always been in the top of Stan Lee Presents prior to getting into the front page?
I don't think it's ever been put quite that way. I think that sometimes we have a hard time deciding whether he's the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth or the universe or the cosmos or the Milky Way galaxy whatever. And I'm fine with him, being ramped up and having as many powers. Here's the thing. Yeah, look, we always say magic has a price, and we're always looking for a way to limit Doctor Strange's powers and so forth and so on. But I got to tell you, that doesn't always fly with me, because what makes him limited is not interesting to me. It's what he does with his powers that makes him interesting to me.
Sure.
That I understand putting some limitations on him, but I don't think comics are about characters who have to follow rules. I think they're about flying, right? They're about doing impossible things. And I think the more rules and regulations we put on our characters, that's just my own personal opinion, but it doesn't wash for me. It's more fun I'm okay with the Doctor Strange who can do kind of whatever I need him to do in a story.
Sure.
I just need him to have a good reason for doing it, and I need there to be consequences for what he does, but I don't need to catalog his powers and spells down to the last detail. I don't know. I'm rambling, but you get what I'm saying.
It's all good. And I wondered which past writers have really kicked your brain. Obviously.
Dude,
okay, yeah, obviously.
Englehart.
Sure.
Boom. That's the one. That's the one. And Jason Aaron done some amazing stuff.
Jason had a great run. Donny Cates had a great run. Absolutely.
Donny had a great run. A lot of people have had really good runs on Doctor Strange. But
Starlin.
If you're asking Starlin, yeah. But if you tell me, but the one that really set the template for me was Englehart, because Englehart's the guy who made him the Sorcerer Supreme. Englehart's the guy who took him from the Stan Lee, Steve Ditko era, Doctor Strange, and transformed him into something, the rising and advancing of the spirit, and gave him a whole new purpose and a whole new reason for existing. And I wanted to emulate that with the space arc. And so we are doing much the same thing. We're giving Doc something in issues 4 and 5, sort of an upgrade that nobody's ever given him before.
Ooh.
And it's going to give us a whole new avenue to tell stories with.
That's excellent, man. No, like I said, I really loved your miniseries. And like you said, he was limited then, and it wasn't a different role. And here's, forgive me of my current Marvel history. Is Wong dead? I remember Brian Vaughn's excellent story from about 10 or 12 years ago, The Cure.
He's still kicking around.
Okay.
He's still around. So,
and certainly with the movie, I don't know if that stuff gets retconned into. Well, no, of course we see Wong in the movies. We're going to have Wong in the comic.
You know what? You'd be surprised. It doesn't happen as often as you'd think.
Okay.
Which actually segues nicely to Ant-Man and the Wasp.
That was going to be king of transitions. You see, we should be doing a morning show. Top of the hour. We just talked about the socks. Let's move things over now to Ant-Man and the Wasp.
I got to tell you, it doesn't really happen that way. When it does happen, it's less. Oh man, they're making me put this character back in the book, and it's more. Wow, now that I've seen how it works in the movie, I have a whole new understanding and respect for that character. Let's see what we can do. That is more often than not how it works.
Sure.
So,
no, that's fine, man. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, and especially if it's for the right reasons for the story, why not? Why not?
Look, as I've said a million times before, if you didn't want stuff coming in from outside media, then you wouldn't have Kryptonite, you wouldn't have Perry White, and you wouldn't have Harley Quinn.
Attaboy. Exactly.
So
you get it.
You gotta pick your battles, and if you're going to be, keep the comics pure, I understand that, but every once in a while, other people outside of comic book writers are allowed to have good ideas about these characters, and get to listen. So with Wasp, what happened was Tom Brevoort came to me a few years ago when I'm on Adventures, and said, and this is concurrent with the first Ant-Man movies, and we want to do something with the Wasp. We want to create. If we can, what if it's possible, is there a seamless way to create a daughter of Hank Pym Wasp that in that way sort of mirrors what's happening in the movies without breaking anything? And I honestly believe if I'd said to Tom, no, that's just stupid, then I don't think we would have done it.
Okay.
I don't think, not because I have any power, but just because I think that it's they're very good about not forcing us to do things. That's what I'm trying to say. Is it's not,
Okay.
So if I'd said, I feel like you're forcing my hand, I think Tom and I would have just said, all right, let's concentrate on something else. But I like the idea. And when I started thinking about it as a big fan of Hank Pym and a big wonk about his history, going back and looking, I realized it was a perfect pocket of time, which is to say that, in Hank's history, his first wife was kidnapped by foreign agents. They weren't very specific back then in 62. And, she died in their custody. And so it was pretty easy to realize, okay, well, there's no reason she couldn't have been pregnant at the time without knowing it. And so, and there was never said how long it's been that she was held captive. So yeah, that's what happens. The baby's born under foreign agents and given over to the Soviets and trained by the Red Room, the folks who brought you Black Widow, and to some degree Bucky Barnes. And, and growing up like that, but idolizing her father, knowing who her father is, and wanting desperately to meet him, to be with him. And it genius breeds true in the Marvel Universe. She's just as sharp as he was, if not sharper. And so when she finally managed to make her break from Russia and come over to America, she can't wait to meet her dad finally. And that's literally 2 weeks or 2 weeks after he goes into space as part of Ultron, and he's never to be seen again.
Oh,
so
Jesus, yeah.
yeah. So all of this seemed like that was going to work, and it seemed like, all right, you know what, that passes the smell test. I mean, I think that washes without it looking too forced in terms of movie continuity. And then when I started coming up with a name for the character, I was casting around for names, and Nadia came to mind just as a Russian name, and I looked it up, and you know what Nadia is Russian for?
No.
Hope.
Oh, awesome.
So perfect. Her
Indeed.
name is Hope. It's just not in our language. But her name is Hope.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So that seemed like an omen to me. Like, okay, well, it's meant to be.
That's excellent. And I was all right. So, right now we're in the microverse, and I don't know how that correct, right? Isn't it kind of it's definitely a shrinking story and everything. We haven't seen Hank yet. Will we see? Is it possible that finally we'll?
I can say yes and no is what I can say.
Interesting. Okay, maybe some time travel involved.
So you'll see. We'll see where we go. But it's fun. It's a romp. I mean, I'm not making you believe this is the grimmest, grittiest, most important comic book Marvel's publishing this month. It's not the most. You know what? It's not the most important comic book.
Nor should it be. Go on. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But it's fun. Let me crank out my physics textbooks and let me rewatch a couple of Doctor Who's and let me enjoy doing fun stuff and straight up science fiction and doing it with an eye towards. I've wanted to get my hand on microscopic characters for a long time because as a physics wonk, I like studying the quantum physics. I don't mean that to sound like a humble brag, like, oh, what a genius I am. No, I know as much as anybody can know from reading the web. I mean, it's not like I'm a super genius about it, but I do pay attention and I do read up, and I find quantum physics and quantum mechanics really fascinating. And there's some great mechanics there for stories, great visuals, great things you can do on a quantum realm. It's not, the model of the universe that you and I knew growing up, the billiard ball or atoms, looking like billiard balls surrounded by other billiard balls. That's not really what an atom looks like. And we should maybe stop drawing it like that in comics. That was kind of my philosophy going in. No more billiard balls surrounded by other billiard balls. Is not what atoms look like.
That's
and
awesome.
Then going from there. and so Javier Groen, who is doing the art, is this. I didn't have any experience with him. We never worked together, but he's grokked onto this like you wouldn't believe. I mean, he really is excited about coming up with new visuals and new weird looks to what that microverse should look like. And it's fun to redefine it with him because he's bringing the heat.
That's excellent, man. And I wanted to ask about that from a clinical standpoint. Are they to make the book economically feasible? And honestly, this isn't meant in any way a knock on these artists, because I do think both in the case of Doctor Strange and Ant-Man and the Wasp, you got great partners here. But are these newcomers, and is it kind of all right, we've got an experienced writer and we've got newcomer artists?
I maybe to some degree. I think there's something to that. I think that I tend to. I've been told, and looking back on my history, I believe it, that I'm a pretty good guy to give to a less experienced writer, or rather a less experienced artist, because I've written so much and because I've written for so many different artists. I'm sort of, if you're going to ask me to write an artist-proof script, I can do it. and it's a collaborative medium too.
Sure.
I mean, I love working with these guys a lot more than, some writers to their, your method is your method. Some guys just sit in their garret and write all by themselves, and other guys are a lot more social, and some of us are more collaborative, and some of us are more possessive, but whatever makes the best story. I'm not judging, but I tend to be a very collaborative writer, and so it's fun dealing with younger guys and newcomers. And because he doesn't sound like he's been around for an hour and a half. I mean, he's doing some stuff, but he's still, yeah. Well, but no, it's fun.
Well, and also,
it's just
go ahead, please.
No, that's all I was going to say. It's just fun.
Well, and I would say you and a guy like Jimmy Palmiotti too, both being former editors. There's also that
exactly.
As well. So
exactly.
No, I get it, man.
Yeah, we know the ropes. I mean, you can trust me with a young artist to, not confuse him and not throw him, and it's sort of not hold his hand. That's the wrong way of approaching it, but not make him feel like he's in over his head.
Absolutely. No, I get it, man. And that's cool. But yeah, it just kind of occurred to me. It's like, oh, that's interesting. And again, you get your experienced vets that you work with as well. So would you say that it is more interesting for you now, especially, well, and even in the case of the Champions, I guess, that you were doing kind of, fresh B level, well, you know what I mean when I say B level characters.
I know what you mean, exactly. No, to say, there's the look. This circles back around to the conversation of, okay, there's plenty of A characters at Marvel, but I've done most of them as well.
Sure.
So it's not. I don't feel like I'm slumming. If that's not that's what you were saying, but I don't feel like I'm slumming because I think these are. I mean, first off, they're all great characters, and I remind everyone that we've lived in a world where Green Arrow has been DC's best-selling comic book not once but twice.
Yeah.
So you can make anything out of anything.
God, Rosenberg right now with Jamie Madrox and everything. I am not an X-Men reader, but that first issue of Multiple Man, it's like, oh, that's just like when Fraction and David Aja were doing Iron Fist, and it's like, no, that's great, and I think that is the exciting moment. Or God, King and Mitch Gerrits right now with Mr. Miracle and everything. It's like
exactly
that's the excitement for especially, older readers and stuff of, thank God, look at this, man. God, I haven't read him for a decade or more, and now we got a brand new story. That's excellent.
Yeah, there's really a point at which is, as you mature as a writer, and you do so much, there's a point at which you're kind of hungry for the B-list characters or the second-tier guys because there's less that's been done with them, and there's more opportunity to do stuff, and they're not appearing in 6 different books that month, and you're not, if you're writing Spider-Man, that's great and that's awesome, but Spider-Man's also being written by like 42 other guys that month.
Agreed. Yeah.
But if you're doing Hawkeye and you're Matt Fraction, then it's your ball game. It's you.
Yeah.
And that's so it's a lot more fun to do that actually.
And there's a couple hundred characters that would love and deserve that kind of attention. And if anything, it just makes them more exciting and. Again, I think attractive to new readers, and I'm happy to see Scott Lang in your hands, and I think again, Nadia is a great addition as well. Now, is she different? Because I didn't read Jeremy Whitlock's Wasp miniseries, so is she a different Wasp than the one that Jeremy was doing?
No, different one. I would say they're the same one rather. So
it is the same one. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Hand it off from me to Jeremy, and then I think there's talk of another. I think there's talk of another Wasp series coming out, I think. So,
with Nadia or a different character?
With Nadia.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay, cool, man. No, and that's the thing. I wasn't sure of the timeline. So that's okay. Because people were pointing to Jeremy's miniseries as well and saying, "Oh, this is a really good run. You should read that." And of course, I've got the trade and it's sitting on my shelf to read, of course, in a big pile, as you know how it goes.
Yes, I know that pile.
Well, let's, if I may, I'm really interested. Sure. And unfortunately, the culture wars that have heated up in recent months.
Sure.
And I know you're right there on the front line, and I'm glad because, certainly I think we share the same views. It's such a fucked up situation right now, Mark. I don't understand the hate that comes from the people that label who all, and this is my point of view, and then I want your point of view. But I'm just. There's room for every kind of comic book, and I welcome the inclusion of creators and characters that do represent other voices and other creeds and colors and orientations. Why not? That's great. Come on in. The water's fine. But then, go ahead.
Yeah, go. No, I was going to say, but we went from a place. I don't know when it happened. I want to say it happened in the last 10 years or so somewhere. It was a subtle change. But somewhere along the way, we went from comics are for everybody to comics are for me and just me. And so that anger that every time we publish a book like America or whatever that isn't made for you, white guy in your 30s, then somehow it's an affront to you. And I'm just thinking, and all I can think is I'm looking at this stuff and I'm thinking, when I was growing up, I didn't buy Conan. I didn't like Conan.
There you go. Sure.
But I wasn't angry that we published Conan. I wasn't angry that we published Sergeant Rock. I just didn't buy it. That's all. And so there's plenty of room for there's a million. If you like any of the main Marvel characters, they're in 800 books a month anyway, so you can find them. It's this anger that comes from fear. I mean, it comes from, I think the core of it obviously is if you're in your 30s, you're a white male, you're feeling attacked because other voices are getting louder, justifiably so. You're becoming demographically, you're becoming a smaller piece of the pie, and that's just the way it goes. And you feel threatened, you feel angry, and you feel like everybody's out to get what is yours. And I'm talking about a very, very, very tiny sliver of our readership, but they're out there.
Sure.
And they get angry, and so they lash out instead of looking for ways to take down, the women in comics, the people, LGBTQ people in comics. They're looking for ways to discredit and mock and hate, and it's really sad and pathetic. And it would be something that you could completely ignore, except for the fact that they target people, like target younger creators, target women in comics, younger creators of color, and they do it in such a mean and hateful and awful way that it's way beyond the bounds of good taste.
Agreed. The only thing, and again, I'm not taking their side at all, but as a casual middle-aged white guy reader, there were a lot of books that these younger legacy characters had taken over the book. And, if you come to Iron Man, look, Riri Williams is a great character. But Tony kind of took a back seat for a while.
But here's
and it seemed like, and please, because I do want to know your point of view. But
you're right. And Jane Foster's Thor and Sam Wilson's Captain America,
all at the same time. And that's the only thing I want to say. Where it's like it was literally kind of at the same time, and it's like, well, I'm like, I like these new characters, and I like the voices. I would say Jason handled it very well because we still had the Odin son story going on while Jane Foster's story was going on. So he didn't take a back seat to Jane. They were sharing the story.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, let me say this. In principle, I agree with what you're saying. I really do. And I understand how frustrating it would be to love these characters and go to them and pick up a bunch of comics and they're not the characters that I recognize. I understand that would be disappointing and frustrating. But a couple of things. I mean, one is that it's not – it happened – yes, at its peak, it was all happening at once.
Yep.
But it didn't all start at once. So it's not like Marvel just one day threw the switch.
Agreed.
And said with planning, a forethought, we're just going to replace all the white guys in comics. It's not the way it happened. It ended up that way, but I think the fact that it ended up that way was as much a surprise to Marvel as and those of us working at Marvel as it was to our fans. It was one of those. It just kind of crept up on us. It wasn't because it wasn't an agenda. Because it specifically was not an agenda. We kind of all woke up one day and went, hey, wait a minute. Hey, they are all gone. And if, and the thing that most baffles me and is that at that moment, at that point, Marvel, Axel Alonso is still in charge. And Marvel's like, you know what? Maybe there's a lot to be said. Maybe there's something to be said for the fact. Maybe we did go a little too far. Let's do some course correction. And that should have been the end of it. That, to me, that should have absolutely been the end of the complaints. What do we heard you. Here's Steve Rogers as Captain America again. We heard you. Here's Tony Stark. We heard you. Why doesn't that settle people down, but it doesn't. Because they've gotten a taste of what it's like to be angry and volatile, and they got people paying attention to them because they're angry and yelling, and so they don't want to suddenly not be paid attention to anymore.
Well, and again, unfortunately, because of the size of the company and the monthly nature of the books, it couldn't stop on a dime. Because yes, we are back to that,
right?
But like Iron Man, that just happened 3 months ago or 2 months ago or whatever. Right. So
right.
Yeah.
Steve was like 9 months ago. Yeah, exactly. Steve Rogers like 6, 7
absolutely.
months ago. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
and you can't because what kind of message does that send too? At the same time, if Marvel suddenly just one day flipped on one Wednesday, suddenly the comics are just white guys again. That also sends a really bad message. So, I understand legacy characters and the appeal of legacy characters more than most anybody as the guy who wrote Wally West for 10 years.
Damn straight.
I totally get it. And I also get in this market that it is really damn hard to launch a brand new superhero that doesn't have some sort of legacy tie to something. It's just hard.
Sure.
It doesn't mean it's impossible, but those are the market realities. I'll tell you that as a writer, and I'll tell you that as a former retailer. Those are the absolute realities of the marketplace. And so I get that it's easier to make something new of Riri Williams if she's in an Iron Man suit than if she's just in her own brand new book.
Right.
Then it's a much harder struggle to get people paying attention to that character and to say something with that character. So I think that it's a shortcut. I think Marvel probably inadvertently abused it. One too many times, two too many times, and they looked at it and they said, you know what? We probably did go a little too far. Let's backtrack a little bit. Problem solved. And yet the lunatics are still angry.
Well, yeah, and I mean they've really created their own industry, obviously, to the point too of this one particular book that I guess certainly had a very successful Indiegogo campaign, Jawbreakers.
Yeah, Jawbreakers.
And this is the diversity in comics guy. And I know you've had your run-ins with this guy. And I got to be honest, I mean, I'm not a fan of this guy. And I've listened to his videos because that's really what they are. Is really more just kind of audio platitudes without any real video happening, other than some pictures of people and stuff. But
right.
I know you've offered to. Have you spoken to him directly?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I had a conversation with him a few months ago. It was the most valueless conversation I've ever had in my life. I was genuinely curious. What is it that drives you? What is it? What are you so angry about? Is it about Captain Marvel being a woman? Well, yeah, it's about Captain Marvel being a woman. Well, is that really what you're angry about? Well, no, it's about this. Well, and I would say, well, okay, well, that's not really the case there either. Then he'd jump around. He would just, I'd try to understand what his complaints were, but I still don't understand. I think the complaints are not the foundation of it. I think the instant celebrity he's gotten out of the complaints are what drives him. So, I don't know, but it was a completely pointless conversation.
Okay.
In which the immortal line was spoken by him. Well, just because I say it's a fact, it's just my opinion.
Jesus. Yeah, I know.
Just I think that's when I hung up on him, I believe, as I recall. That was the last thing he said before I laughed and hung up.
Well,
I tried. Look, I tried, but you can't, some people you just can't read. They don't want to be reached. They don't want to be talked to.
No, and again, this is where we are in the culture wars right now, where it really is just two sides not listening to the other side, period. And now, yeah, please, if you've got a comment on that, I'm happy to.
Well, no, it's I mean what's happening in comics is mirroring what happens in the nation, right? We just don't, we have our opinions and we don't talk to each other. I just don't know what kind of conversation you can have in this case. We're talking about a movement that started when somebody mocked a memorial service for Flo Steinberg.
Yes, and go on, please. Right,
and the whole thing started because some lunatic online made fun of a lot of these women who went out, and shared a picture on Twitter of them, toasting Flo Steinberg, who was Stan Lee's aide de camp, Stan Lee's Girl Friday, Stan Lee's right-hand girl, in the 60s.
Absolutely.
And one of the most, if not the most beloved women to ever be in comics.
Agreed.
In terms of in terms of all of flow. So, these guys, these women go out and they raise a toast and
get shit on.
This guy loses man. And it just becomes this whole horrible, and I don't want to use the language. I don't want to use the language that was used about them.
Agreed.
And how awful. Just indefensible.
Well,
absolutely indefensible. And then and after that, then threats, then comments that were private comments that were really stomach turning. I mean, just all kind of deep harassment. And the problem that you have with trying to make that point to people is that one of the things that happened was I was approached around this time. I was approached by a bunch of different younger people in comics. Many of them didn't even know each other, but they all knew that I don't like bullies and that I'm pretty loud. And they're like, what do we do? And I don't think they realized how many of them were getting it from the same people. And they would send me these private messages. They send me these, these direct messages. They send me these things that were just awful. I mean, really calling you for, calling the worst names in the world, telling you should die, to these women in comics, or younger creators in comics, LGBTQ creators in comics, horrible stuff. Yeah. Well, then the question becomes, well, can we need to make this public? And then a lot of these people justifiably said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to. If I go out and circulate these threats these people have made against me, it just makes it worse, and it does make it worse.
Agreed.
And so, or just with a lot of these women, it was, I just want to do my job, and I can't, if these threats get, if we start about, if we start publishing these threats, we start going public with all this stuff, then it just makes things worse for me. It just drags, me down. And I just, there's a point at which I just want to go to bed at night. They were saying, some of them were saying this. And I totally get that. I respect that. I wish that they didn't feel that way, but I would have to respect that 100%. So, it becomes, well, these people have said there's been some people online who've been said some terrible, horrible, awful things about people in comics, not about the work, but about the people themselves, and made these horrible threats. And I mean, I've gotten death threats. I got 3 death threats myself just in that sort of pocket of time.
Jesus.
One of them to my house, by the way. One of them to my house. That was delightful. So
in what like to your door, or? Oh yeah,
in my mail. Yeah, somebody found my address, and there it is, my mailbox.
Lovely.
Hello, feds. But
yes, damn straight. Good for you, man.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
And what I get, like, I don't want to sound like I'm the standard bearer here. I mean, what I get in terms of abuse online is 1/10 of what women in comics get, 1/10 of what LGBTQ creators in comics get. But so we have that. So we get all these stuff. So we all we can say to fans who are confused as to why these people are coming after us is, we're getting these threats, and then their response is always, well, then show it, prove it, you're lying. Well, I'm kind of in between a rock and a hard place, because I'm not lying, and I've never lied to you, and I've been in this business for 33 years, and I challenge you to find a time when I've ever lied to any of you. But I can't put other people online like this. I have to respect their opinions and their wishes. So it's ugly. I mean, it just just seems to have shown some sign of slowing down, but it's just sad. It's internet trolls, and it's so easy. It is so easy for older white guys, whether you're in comics or out of comics, to just go, don't listen to them. It's really easy to say that, but you're not the one who's getting it 99% of the time. So maybe have a little understanding. Maybe that is the answer. Maybe the answer is, ignore them. Maybe that is the answer, but don't make it a knee-jerk response. Have some compassion. Look at the way it's affecting some of these people who just want to go out there and do their jobs. And unfortunately, especially for younger creators, being on social media is a necessary evil.
Yes.
I mean, you have to be because you got to promote your stuff. You got to get your name out there. You got to do what you can to promote your own wares, and that means being on social media, and that makes you a target, and it sucks. I mean, the flip side of that argument is, and there's some truth to this as well, the flip side of that argument is you're public figures. And as public figures, you are going to sacrifice some degree of decency and of privacy. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that is true. That does not make what these people do right. It does not make what these people do excusable. But it's, that's part of what happens when you're a comics professional, is you're a public figure.
And you're approachable in a way that other public figures aren't.
We are approachable in a way that no other figures in all of entertainment are approachable.
Agreed.
You think, I don't think...
We're talking, Mark. What are you talking about?
Exactly. This is the thing. Comics creators are the easiest people in the world to find.
Yeah.
You're going to tweet your favorite baseball player. I don't think he's going to see what you're going to say. But if you're going to tweet Nick Spencer, he's probably going to see it and read it.
Sure.
It's just we're super accessible. This is the downside to being so super accessible. This is that you get to hate us so much face to face. It's so weird.
Yeah, and there are creators that I've always respected and had a difference of opinion politically, but always felt, we could put that aside and have a conversation. And I'm sure that's the case for 99% of them still. And it's not so much them, but it is some of their followers on the right that kind of embrace this alt-right extreme voice and platform that keep me from getting these people back where I would like to have a conversation. And I'm hoping I'll run into somebody at a convention, although I don't know where their welcomingness is in some cases. But honestly, reasonable people, but they have unreasonable followers. And I've even engaged, as I'm sure you have, in social media where I've disagreed with what they said. And it's not so much my conversation with them. It's literally the 50 other people that take that opportunity to chime in that are like, how you doing? And it's like, they're like roaches. Sorry for the comparison if you lean that way, but it really is like all of a sudden there are 25 to 50 more people that engage. And it's like, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to this person that I've known for over 10 years. And we've been able to have reasonable conversations.
And I will say this. I will say that, you cannot be held responsible for what your followers and your fans say.
Agreed.
At the same time, if I knew at any given time that I had a fan or a follower out there who was spewing hate, who was spewing, bigotry, who was being ugly to people, I would shut that thing down in a cocaine heartbeat.
I agree. Yeah.
And I feel that's you can agree or disagree, but I feel to some degree that's my moral responsibility. It's my ethical responsibility as a public figure. So I will shut you down in a cocaine heartbeat if you are going to be ugly to people and point at me as somehow the guy who pointed you in that direction. So the failure to do that on the part of other people is repellent and it's repugnant. And if you really genuinely are the good guy you say you are, then maybe show it by stopping with the dog whistling and instead legitimately shutting down people who are, taking your name in vain, if you will.
Can I ask, as we wrap up, about Antarctic Press specifically with Jawbreakers? Because what happened in that instance? Again, we started with that. The Diversity in Comics guy does the Indiegogo campaign. He gets some other conservative artists that are reasonable names in comics and stuff to help him out with his thing. They set up a deal with to publish their book through Antarctic Press, and then what happens?
So what happens is, and again, let me stop you right there and say that's great, good for them. I don't care whether they get a comic book out or not. No one wants to stop people from publishing comics. By all means, do your little comic. If it's big, terrific. I hope you make $1 million off this thing. Comics are great. Everybody should be doing comics. No one ever said anything different. What happened was when the announcement was made, And I'm West Coast, so by the time I got up in the morning,
it's 4 hours later.
the comics world was already on fire that day, with people livid that Antarctic Press would make a deal with these guys who were, again, at the nexus of this comicsgate nonsense, at the nexus of this, hatred and anger and anti, this whole misogynistic, ugly, targeted hatred and harassment. People are furious at Antarctic Press for making a deal for them and, making a deal with them and let's burn the place down. And all I did was look at this and went, well, that doesn't sound like Ben. I mean, I know Ben and his brother. I don't know them very well, but I know them to be ethical people. I respect Antarctic Press. This seems odd. So I made the mistake of saying in public, before we burn the place down,
meaning Antarctic Press, go on.
Yeah, before we burn Antarctic to the ground, let me just give them the benefit of the doubt for a moment and make a call and see if they understand why people are coming at them with torches and pitchforks, okay? So sure enough, I call him up. I talked to Dunn.
Ben Dunn, yeah.
He's flabbergasted. That's his brother I was talking to, actually, and it was just...
they didn't know.
Or Ben. I don't know. Frankly, neither here nor there. So...
Okay.
Neither here nor there. And, I got on the phone. By the time I got on the phone with him, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my time, West Coast. And he's like, yeah. He's like, he's already heard it all day long. And our conversation was private. I don't want to, just out of respect to him, I don't want to quote or even, I'd be careful about, paraphrasing.
Okay.
But the gist of it was, I said, look, I don't think you understood what you got in with here, and then again, you publish whatever you want. And I'm not going to stop you, and I can't stop you, and I'm not going to burn the house down if you do. It's whatever but I just want you to understand what you've done. Just because that's when people are angry at you and your creators are leaving your company in droves, which is already happening that morning. People, creators for Antarctic were storming out the door going, never again. Let's have a conversation about this. As somebody who's been at the point of, in the forefront of dealing with these guys. Yeah. So we had a conversation, a very good conversation. And I honestly said to him, and you can believe me or not believe me, but you, John, know that I will not lie to you.
I do.
Conversation was, you know what? I don't care what you do. Will you do whatever you want to do, and I'll back your play, whatever you decide to do, but know this, that this is why people are angry at you. And I don't think I told him anything he didn't already know. So Antarctic announces an hour later, hey, we're out of the business with this guy. We're not going to publish this book. And for about 3 seconds, everybody on the comicsgate guys, all the angry, racist, misogynist, bigoted guys, were freaking out.
Sure.
At Antarctic.
Sure.
For about 3 seconds. And then somebody remembered, oh, wait, Mark Waid made that call, didn't he? So suddenly, now the whole world's angry at me.
Yeah. Now,
I am flattered that you think I personally have the power to make a publisher publish or not publish what they want to publish. If I known I had that power...
Where you been, man?
I know. I would have been exercising that power a lot more heavily in the last 33 years.
You're the sorcerer supreme. My God, absolutely.
Exactly. So that's flattering that you think I'm that powerful, but that's adorable. You think I'm that powerful, but more to the point. Look, fine. Let the baby have his bottle. Be angry. I don't care. What did happen is I had to shut down social media, and it left my Facebook. I'd already left Twitter some time ago. These guys had driven me off Twitter, but Facebook I had to leave as well because it just became a landing page for the next 48 hours for the most vile, ugly, hateful rhetoric and guys who didn't really understand what was going on. They were just being told that I had shut down this comic that they wanted to read. And therefore, and by the way, let's step back when you get into the crime of it all. When I said, just be aware of what they've done, it wasn't just, this dark, ugly mindset of, white guys forever. It was also the retailers. The thing had happened where there's a private retailer group on Facebook. A couple of days, this is where this thing all blew up at the same time. Private group on Facebook of retailers who had decided, hey, you're going to carry this book when it comes out from, Indiegogo. You're going to try to carry it in your stores. And people were going, no, I don't think so. And several retailers said, no, I'm not going to carry that book because I just don't like this guy's politics. I don't like the way he treats women. I don't like the way he treats women in comics. I don't like the way that he and his followers comport themselves when it comes to, how aggressively, ugly they are to people in comics. I'm not going to carry it. So, this guy and his followers decide, let's make a list of all those stores who are not going to carry our comics and their phone numbers and the names of all their employees. Let's make that list and circulate that list. It's not harassment. We're not telling anybody to call and harass. We're just giving out people's names
and numbers.
It's ridiculous.
Agreed.
And you can even make the case that you can get a store number out of a phone book.
Sure.
Yeah, you can, but I don't know that Mary Smith works there.
Right.
But now I do. And so when I call, I can ask for Mary Smith and give her shit. Like that's her job. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, no shit.
Complete for anyone to say, we're gonna make a list of the names. We're gonna make a list of the stores that aren't carrying the book. Okay, fine. That seems pretty counterproductive. It seems like you'd want to be making a list of the stores that are carrying the book,
right?
If you're going to market your book. But that's your business decision. And we're going to give out the phone numbers. All right, fine. You know what? You're going to give the phone numbers of the stores so that you can, have people call them and say, gee, I wish you were carrying this book. I think you're making a mistake by not carrying this book. All right, I'll give you that. But all the employees' names, that's harassment. That's bullshit.
Good Lord,
that's
yes.
where it's flat out, full stop, a harassment technique. There's no other reason to make sure that everybody knows every employee's first and last name who works at these stores. No other reason than that.
It's like picking on caddies for a country club's policies. Forgive the equivalent comparison. Those of you who work at comic stores, I don't mean it in a condescending way at all.
No, but that's exactly. It's just if I don't like the way my bank is treating me, I don't go scream at the teller.
Yeah, man, having both jobs, yes.
Right. So it's just that was the biggest. I can't believe I buried the lead, man. When we first started talking.
No, I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, and you're right, and I remember reading that. Go on.
That was the biggest. That was the giant sin. That was the place where people were mad at Antarctic, not just for getting in bed with people who allegedly do this or this or this in terms of harassment, but who definitively, helped give light and shed light on that campaign. So that was, that's just non-starter. So anyway, so for the next 48 hours, of course, my Facebook page is nothing but a hotbed of hatred and loathing. Yeah. And the sad thing is, a lot of it was from younger fans who I don't know any of this harassment stuff, don't know any of this. All they know is that, they wanted to read this comic book because it looked kind of neat, and Mark Waid made a publisher shut it down, and I'm mad at Mark Waid. If that's all the information I had, I might be angry too, but that's not all the information there is. But anyway, I just had to shut the thing down because all the responses started bleeding onto it wasn't just responses to any posts I was making on Facebook. They were just littering up and spamming my Facebook page with nonsense. Here's a post about my mom, and then there'd be in this message, in the comments section, all of a sudden there'd be all this horrible, nasty vitriol and shit about what a horrible person I am. Or here's a post about my dog, and then Mark Waid, you suck. Well, guess what? So I cut you. So I had to bail out of that. Yeah. It's a shame because Facebook was a good way for me to keep in touch with my family, my extended family. And I don't really have that avenue right now, but it's just I guess it's what comes of doing comics. I don't know. Anyway, that's the story.
Well, I appreciate
it's a long story, but the very best thing about it, and I know at this point I'm poking the bear, and I know at this point, CB Cebulski's cringing to hear me talk about this, but the number of the number of legal, all I'll say is the number of legal experts that suddenly came out of the woodwork was delightful.
Yeah,
was just adorable.
Which is one of the reasons why this is confusing me. Yes, that you are liable in some way. Which, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not Clarence Darrow. I'm not a great lawyer or anything. I'm not on The Practice or any of these legal shows. But yeah, I'm like, what? What?
I know. That was hysterical. That is my absolute, angry fans. My absolute favorite flavor is legal expert, and it's just I was breaking all sorts of interstate laws, and he swore to complain against me against the attorney general of the state, and I'm still waiting for that paper to show
California
up.
or Texas, because Antarctic Press is Texas, I believe.
Right. I don't remember. He ran it somewhere. Probably Texas. I don't know. I just think that's adorable. It's all noise. I mean, it's all just pomp and circumstance. It's all just let's keep the controversy alive as long as we can because that keeps the spotlight on us and that gives us attention. That's what it's all about. That's believe me, I'll let you know when I'm served with papers for this. I'll let you know.
Well, I'll be a character witness if you need me, buddy. It's all right, man.
I wouldn't be holding my breath.
I understand.
So
I hear you. And again, it really, again, they're very loud, and that they are only a small voice in the wilderness.
But they are exactly.
They're very loud. They're very loud.
And again, now we've done 30 minutes on them, and I've said you don't want to give them oxygen, and then I went and did 30 minutes on them, and I regret that. But here's the thing, and this is what I want the takeaway to be for people who are listening who aren't, already trying to find me and send more death threats. Takeaway is this: that if you are a younger fan or a younger creator or a younger somebody in comics or somebody who doesn't feel as protected, you're not alone. You're not alone. And there's a bunch of us out here. There's a bunch of comic book guys. For all of the loudmouths like myself who were not afraid of giving these guys oxygen and therefore stupidly giving them oxygen, there's more of us who are not giving them oxygen but are working very hard behind the scenes to make sure that this nonsense stops. And I think it's important for these people to know for every time I go on a rant like this, I regret it. And I feel bad about the fact that I've given, oxygen to this shit again. But then a younger creator, when I was at Houston a few weeks ago, the number of younger creators and the number of younger fans came up to me and just said, thank you, thank you for stepping up. And I didn't need their thanks. I mean, it's appreciated, but I don't deserve I'm not a hero. I didn't deserve their thanks. I just want them to know that it's important for me. It was good for me to know that they know that they're not alone, that people are out there, that they're not,
They don't have to be afraid. They don't have to be afraid of these assholes.
They don't have to be afraid of these assholes. You don't have to be afraid. Look, if first off, I'll gladly take the heat for you because I got the shoulders for it. And if that's my job, then that's my job. I'll take the bullet. I'll take the friendly fire. I don't care. I'll take the fire. I don't care. But the point being that, and again, I will get chewed out by a half a dozen editors tomorrow for even giving these guys oxygen by talking about it. But I can, I like the fact that there's people out there who hear this and know that they're not alone.
Agreed.
When they get harassed like this, they're not alone, and there's people looking out for them. As best we can, I'm not even necessarily looking out for them. I'm just.
You're on their side.
I'm on their side. There you go. Yeah. That's a better way to put it. I'm not looking at them. I'm on their side because looking out for them makes it sound like they're helpless waifs, and they're not. But I'm on their side, and there are a lot of people on their side, and it's important for them to know that. There you go, John. As usual, you have taken your sword of Damocles and you've cut through the Gordian knot of my 30 minutes of rhetoric, and what you've said is it's important for people to know that there are other people on their side. And that is why we talk about this. Thank you, Mark.
Amen, son. I mean, and I'm on their side as well, and that's why we're having this discussion. And again, I keep saying this to people in our age group and slightly older, that there is a perspective that I think we have in our decades of just living. And it really is. It's not wisdom. It's just we've been around long enough that all of this stuff kind of clicks in. I get angry. My First Amendment gene kicks in, and and my simple further comment would be: make the book that you want to make, by all means. And you said it as well at the top of this. Don't be an asshole about it. And don't fuck with these other people that just disagree with you about it.
Exactly. Have at, but if you think comics is going to embrace you after you make videos on YouTube talking about women being, how much language can I use here, John?
As much as you want. There's the free First Amendment. Go for it.
I know, but still, but sorry, I just know what our limitations were.
No, it's an adult show. Go on.
If you're on YouTube making videos about how women in comics are cum dumpsters who get their jobs by sucking off editors and sucking off writers and artists, do not be surprised when people in comics speak ill of you and don't want to play with you and don't want to have you play their reindeer games. Do not be surprised by this. That's it. You can't. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is, if you want to make your comics, feel free, have at. But we as an industry are not going to celebrate people who refer to women in comics as cum dumpsters.
That's right.
And talk about how they all fuck their way into the industry. That's just indefensible. It's wrong. It's not funny. It's not a lampoon. It's not a joke. It's said with seriousness, and it's said with a misogynistic vitriol that the heart of it is, why can't I be in comics like they are? And it's a shame that it exists, but that exists. So anyway,
you got to point
there you
sometimes we got to point out the assholes, Mark, and I appreciate you being as candid as you were, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry to leave you on.
No.
Punch a speed bag right now and get out there.
Nah, so you catch me. You catch me the week after my friend Harlan dies, and now I'm reminded of why it's important to be angry sometimes.
Quick, nice memory of Harlan, at least to go on and up.
Great. I mean, look, I've known Harlan forever, and I'm not going to pretend I've known him as well as so many other people in comics, but I have respected him. He was my hero growing up.
Me too, man.
There is not a single other human being outside of family who has been more influential on me in my life than Harlan.
Wow.
And unquestionably, I wanted to be him when I was a kid. If they'd had Harlan Ellison posters, I'd have them on my walls. I worship that guy. And growing up, I realized, he was a complicated, difficult individual sometimes, and like we all are. But Jesus, he didn't like bullies.
Yes, indeed.
And he would fight tooth and nail, and I respect that more than you can imagine.
My greatest tribute or experience, and it really wasn't one that we were with personally. I'll save my own personal Harlan Ellison story for not your conversation, but another time. But I did that show, Prophets of Science Fiction, for the Science Channel, and I was one of the talking heads. And this Isaac Asimov episode, it was such a pleasure that the last people to have the final word on Asimov, it went Harlan, myself, and then Ridley Scott closed the show. And all of my college friends that are nerds as well are like, okay, who doesn't belong in that trio? I'm like, yeah, no shit, man. But so brilliant. And I'll save my Harlan thoughts for another time because we've exceeded the meter as I drive you around the virtual podcast.
Run over again, sir.
Yes.
I apologize.
No, dude, are you kidding? I would be thrilled to have, as you know, a Marty Pasco length conversation with you on Word Balloon.
We should definitely do this more often. We should definitely be doing this more often.
Buddy.
I have no idea who's listening to this. I have no idea who is. How is it that the entire world is not tired of hearing me talk after all these years? I got no idea.
Are you kidding?
But
shut up, man. Jesus. Are you kidding? Dude. I have been interviewed more. I've been interviewed more than anyone in comics, including Stan Lee. So I can't believe. You still want to – I just can't believe there's still an appetite out there for it. But as long as there is, I guess you can wind me up and pull my string in the back, and I'll keep talking. Dude, beyond your what we've just discussed in the last half hour, your thoughts on Superman, every character. Dude, the best experience I had – and again, I don't want to keep you, but we had that Marvel press conference when you and Rucka were doing that Daredevil, Punisher, Spider-Man story that crossed over both of your books. And – honestly, your thoughts on Frank Castle. And it's just like you said about, I would never think of asking you, although I think you did write eventually Conan, didn't you? Or maybe not.
No, I've never
have
done
read Conan. Okay. Well, just like The Punisher, and you were saying, I never really thought about Frank Castle, and then you go out and spell. And by the way, Word Balloon fans, you can hear that press conference on one of our episodes. But yeah, I mean, it's just people want to know what you think about characters, and again, it's perspective. It's not wisdom.
Yeah.
It's perspective. Being around as long
It's
as you've had.
perspective.
And, you
Yes.
know, and every now and then, like our last conversation, I found that short story that you did in that Further Adventures of Superman prose collection, and you did that story Forget Me Not. And it's such a sweet little Superman story that would fit in any era.
Thank you.
Absolutely, dude. Good Lord. I love that story. And it was like,
glad,
I think
glad to hear it holds up.
oh shit. Yeah. I mean, so yeah.
Thank you.
So no, it's always a pleasure. And yeah, please. I know and then the next thing we know, it's been like a year and a half since we've talked on the air.
Well, we won't let that happen this time. Let's nail this down before the fall. We'll have another
Excellent.
one.
Well, yeah, when they make the new announcement and stuff, and we'll have more time and we'll talk more. But seriously, man, as always, appreciate the conversation, and believe me, the listeners do as well.
Thank you, sir.
I'm telling you, he's just as entertaining and interesting in person as he is on these podcasts. I'm always happy to welcome Mark Waid back to Word Balloon, and I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. It was all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, as always, League, for your excellent support. If you want to subscribe to Word Balloon, do you think Word Balloon is worth the price of a comic each month? Can you spare $1 a month? If you can and want to support the cause, you can go to patreon.com/wordballoon or click on the front page ad of the Patreon account at wordballoon.com. Word Balloon is also brought to you by InStock Trades at InStockTrades.com. A great selection of Mark Waid product is waiting for you at great prices at InStock Trades. You can get the first volume of his Daredevil run. Lots of great artists on this, but this was The Devil Reborn, and it started off with a very upbeat Daredevil after all the years of noir. This is a great departure where we kind of got back to the fun of Daredevil, and it started all with this volume. It's 42% off for the first hardcover, $20.29. There are other great books, like you can get the hardcover volume 2. This also features, we briefly talked about it in the interview, it's Mark and also Greg Rucka, and it features that Punisher Spider-Man crossover that I talked about. And again, you should really listen to the press conference that we did. Marvel did the press conference, and it was really great to hear Mark and Greg talk about the characters. But this is hardcover volume 2 of Daredevil. It's also 42% off, $20.29. Volume 3 starts his run with Chris Samnee. Javier Rodriguez, the alternate artist on this, but both amazing artists. I love the Samnee-Waid collaboration in particular. 42% off, $23.19. There are more volumes of Daredevil's, Mark Waid's Daredevil waiting for you. A couple, like Volume 3 and Volume 4, are available, the trade paperbacks, for $9.85. More premium hardcovers. Volume 6, featuring Javier Rodriguez and Samnee. That's 42% off, $11.59. Volume 7 is 42% off, $14.49. So there's a lot of Waid Daredevil waiting for you at InStockTrades.com. There's also things like Fantastic Four by Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo. What a great run that was, and we've certainly talked about that in the past. 42% off, $14.49 for the Ultimate Collection Trade Book 4. There's also Hulk Volume 1, Banner DOA, Mark Waid and Mark Bagley, 42% off, $7.53. So tons of great Mark Waid product waiting for you at InStockTrades.com. Don't take my word for it. Just check it out for yourself, InStockTrades.com. Thanks again for listening to Word Balloon. Have a great 4th of July weekend. San Diego is coming up. Now, I won't be at San Diego. However, I will, a month later, be at Terrificon at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. Really looking forward to this show. An incredible lineup of current and past comic book greats. I can't wait. I am going to do so much networking and get some of these people both after the con, but also before the con. You already heard Jerry Ordway in our last episode. And coming up also later in July, you're going to hear from Don McGregor, who's also going to be at the convention. I'm hoping to arrange things with Roy Thomas before the convention and get a conversation with Roy. But I really want to talk to some of the all-time greats. Ryan Stegman, finally. After years of good acquaintanceship, I'm really excited to finally have Ryan coming on Word Balloon in the weeks ahead before Terrificon. So just a sample of what's coming up in the days and weeks ahead in July and into August here at Word Balloon. It's going to be a great summer, and I'm happy to share some of these great conversations with you. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2018. Happy 4th.